Let's unbox the Funko Pop vinyl of HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. Now that Christmas Day is behind us, it's time to dive right in and start opening up all of the cool Star Wars collectibles that we received for Christmas. And I got two Funko Pop vinyl Star Wars figures that were quite high on my wish list, and they are both from the Knights of the Old Republic video game series. I received Darth Trayer number 729 and HK-47 number 730. I already opened up a Darth Trayer yesterday. She looks amazing out of her box. So of course now it's time to open up HK-47 as well. This iconic Star Wars character was introduced in the very first Knights of the Old Republic video game and has since appeared in a number of games, including one of my personal all-time favorites, Star Wars The Old Republic. So I really am so excited to be adding this one to my Funko collection. I'm sure it's going to look really cool out of the box. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll get HK-47 out of the box so we can see all of the details under some good lighting. But first, let's take one last look at the packaging. As a single figure, this Funko Pop vinyl of HK-47 comes packaged in the iconic Funko single figure box that we know and love. Now for this one, we have a bit of a yellow gold starry accent background here for the top banner and down the side there. We've got the iconic Pop logo, the Star Wars logo in black, and a bit of a gold toned color for the number circle here, 730. That same gold tone color is used for the nameplate here, which reads HK-47 in brackets Legends. We've got a bit of a preview of HK-47's face or sort of droid head here on the left, and we can see that nice clear window there, which also features the silver and blue special edition international sticker there. We can see that slightly raised design there on the front, really nice. Now we've got that nice big window looping around here onto the side, where we can see that this one, it doesn't actually have that clamshell plastic packaging. We just have the single window layer. And of course we have that inner plastic tray of sort of forming a bit of a C shape around the figure there. So it is one of those ones where we do get a little bit of a clearer shot in here, but I do think they look better out of the box. Now of course on the side panel we have the nameplate HK-47 Legends, the number, and a little bit of a preview there of HK's head there. And the other side is one of my favorite panels on a Funko Pop vinyl box, where we get the full image there of the Funko figure design. We have the Pop logo there at the top, the nameplate and number underneath, and we can really see that starry galaxy print here in behind the figure. Really quite fun. Moving on to the back, again we have that starry print all over the back of the box. We've got a little bit of a preview there of the HK figure off to the left there, and we have some of the other figures released around the same time, which are coincidentally all from Star Wars video games. We have Darth Malgus from Star Wars The Old Republic, Darth Trayer from Knights of the Old Republic 2, and HK-47 introduced in Knights of the Old Republic and also in a few other video games. Now if you are familiar with video game collectibles, they used to be under the banner of Gaming Greats. In fact, earlier video game Funko Pop vinyl figures also had a slightly different packaging style, and some also had the Gaming Greats sticker. You can see I have here Darth Revan, Darth Malak, and the 13th Battalion Trooper as a bit of an idea of some of the variations of that earlier Gaming Greats packaging design. In fact, if I just move HK over a little bit and bring in Darth Revan, you can see that the original Gaming Greats line had a similar design to the box, but the color tone for that galaxy print was a pale grey. It's interesting to see now that we have adopted the Legends banner, used primarily for content under Star Wars released prior to the Disney acquisition, or as fans will call it nowadays, non-canon. It's interesting to see that the Gaming Greats line has kind of been moved into the Legends banner, and so with that gold tone sort of iconography here for the Legends line, we now have that gold starry background there instead of the original Gaming Greats sort of silver and grey tones there. A little bit of a shame if you like to collect specific lines and want all the packaging to match, because now we have that different color scheme. So when you line them up on your shelf, they're going to look a little bit different. Of course, we can still see that same galaxy print behind behind them, but the colors are very different. So a little bit of an interesting change there. I have noticed that on some other collectible lines, like the Hasbro Vintage Collection line, I have also seen the lack of the Gaming Greats logo on those ones there as well. So perhaps this is Disney shifting away from the Gaming Greats logo and use and just keeping everything nice and simple with that Legends banner there, which I think is kind of fun. I do hope to see lots of video games, comics, and book characters released under this Legends banner. So that is a look at the box and a little bit of a comparison with earlier figures from the Knights of the Old Republic game series. So let's get HK-47 out of his box. As usual, I'm going to open up my Funko box from the underside. Let's just open up that bottom flap there and let's pull out the tray. Okay, and just a little bit of a peek at the insert card in there, packaged in behind the character. We have that same galaxy print in that yellowy gold color there as the backdrop inside the box. So let's open up the plastic tray and get the figure out. Always a bit loud. There we go. Okay, so now we have HK-47 out of the box. His color is absolutely fantastic. A really sort of interesting orange red, almost sort of like a rust color. And he's got some really cool metallic weathering. Okay, let's quickly clear out the packaging and tidy up a little bit so we can take a closer look at the details. HK-47 looks really cool out of the box. So of course he is a brighter color. I could see a lot of the details inside the box, but there are some really interesting elements that were a little bit hidden in behind the plastic window. So the first thing that caught my eye is the fact that overall he is a brighter color than indicated on the box art in particular. And this is mostly noticeable around his eyes, his sort of droid eyes. On the particular figure, they are a painted red, but they are so close in color to the actual sort of orange red of his head that it's very different to the way that they are contrasting here on the box art. I kind of wish they stood out a little bit better. You almost kind of lose where his eyes are on this particular figure because, of course, generally speaking, Funko have those big round black eyes for human and humanoid characters. Now, of course, he's got different shaped eyes, different colored eyes, so they get just a little bit lost with the color. Of course, Funko are going to try and match the colors of the character as seen in the video game, of course, but it's a little bit of a shame that it's not quite as contrasting as it is there on the box. The eyes, especially under this lighting, when I'm looking at it in person, when I focus on the eyes, I can see that they are painted a different color, but they just aren't quite as strong and distinct as on the box art there. But in saying that, there are some really, really cool details on this figure. Now, something that's quite obvious when you're looking at the body is this all over a sort of like a dirty wash to kind of give him a weathered, you know, sort of battle-worn look. And you can see this most especially on the back of the figure, which again is really hidden inside the box. You're never going to see this. So you can kind of see this dark weathering finish to really tone down the sort of gloss of the plastic figure. I like this. It's almost got a little bit of a green, a little bit of a brown tone tint, just sort of that sort of in-world sort of grime that's going to sort of build up on a droid built for battle and assassinations there. So that's really fun. And when you look really carefully, you can actually see the wash across the top of the head as well. Now, of course, because you don't have a lot of fine lines, washes over big flat surface areas don't tend to sort of pull and gravitate into the sort of nooks and crannies that you do on the smaller sort of torso parts here, where we've got lots of fine details, particularly around here, around the hips and around on the backs of the shoulders. But when you look at the head, you can actually see that sort of grime wash. You can sort of see it in a bit of a horizontal wash pattern across the back of the head there, and even on the front of the figure you can just sort of catch it in certain areas. I can start to see it coming in here, which is nice. I don't like it when weathering and sort of washes are asymmetrical in where they are applied. If a droid is going to be in battle and getting grimy, it needs to be sort of all over. And unfortunately, some particular product lines, they do a really good job of doing sort of paint effects on the front of the figure, and then the back of the figure is a little bit sort of underwhelming. Now I do notice generally Funko's really good about details on the backs of their figures, especially when you think about for some characters and some costumes, you almost never see the details on the back, so you know they get some really good reference photos for those specific figures. Now I see a really good level of wash on both sides of the figure. We've got some really neat silver painting, that's sort of the metallic sort of underneath showing through the battle-worn paint. So we've got some really cool metallic sort of weathering effects on the face, around the front, and on the front of the body. But when I turn it around to the back, I don't see any of that silver weathering effect, and unfortunately that's a little bit odd to me. This reminds me of some other sort of collectible companies where they sort of feel like they know that certain collectors are not going to take things out of the packaging, so they kind of skip a few steps, which is a little bit unfortunate because I really like the details on the back of Funko figures, and there have been some figures that I've opened up recently where I was just blown away with the level of detail that was sort of tucked in, sort of underneath robes and things like that, places where you're almost never going to see it, but there's just no silver weathering on the back of the figure. The closest I can get to is kind of on the side of the leg here when I sort of tip it to the side. Of course, sort of the droid sort of articulation points here on the legs are silver, and we can see that from the back, but there is no silver weathering here on the back, and I just think maybe just a few touches that would be nice, considering just how much of it is here on the front of the figure. Now, in saying that, of course, we are going to display Funko figures facing forwards. That's generally the way we're going to display most of our collectibles there. And I do really like the front pose, the way it's sculpted. Long ago, we had those sort of awkward, just sort of wide-legged stance of Funko figures. I really like the sort of the slightly more realistic poses and bodies that we get in the modern era. So I do like the pose here. He's got his beloved blasted rifle here. It's just a gloss black, very nice, held in both hands there, sort of held across the body, ready to assassinate an unsuspecting meatbag. And I really like the detail on the front. Now, of course, but we don't have those big eyes, but he does have a lot of personality. He's got some iconic lines in the video games where he is featured. So I can hear his voice in my head when I look at items like this, which I think is really fun. We've got a nice detail here for his sort of a voice modulator here on the front of his face. This nice texture there with a really nice sort of dark metallic silver accent color there. Of course, we've got that silver weathering painted very nicely. And then we've got all of those silver and weathering sort of wash details over the front of the body with a silver articulation accent points sort of around at the hips, the knees, and the ankles there as well. A little bit on the arms here as well. Some detail points sort of painted in there. Some really nice detail. So because when it comes to sort of weathered, sort of battle-worn figures, you can get away with a little bit of sort of paint irregularities, but I have to say this looks really tidy. Everything looks painted where it should be. I don't really notice anything sort of misaligned. All of the paints are on the sculpted elements where they should be. You can see even these sort of bracer details there, that metallic silver very nicely lined up, and on the front of the face very nicely painted. Really nice to see, and we don't have any glue spillage around the feet. Of course, the modern Star Wars Funko figures are permanently glued down, but we don't have any sort of white cast or clear glue residue around his feet. And of course, he is standing atop of the standard Star Wars base used across the Star Wars figure line within the Funko Pop vinyl range. And we've got that front plaque there at the front with a nice, tidy silver Star Wars logo there, just a little bit higher on the right hand side compared to the left, but not as bad as some that I've seen. It's fairly straight, but my eye can just detect just that slight slope up towards the right hand side. Very, very minimal, but at least we don't have any scratches. That's where I get sort of a little bit frustrated when there's a noticeable scratch and that silver printing there, nice and clean there. So he is really cool. I know, I might get perhaps a little bit bothered by the fact that there is no silver weathering detail detail on the back here, but I do appreciate the fact that we do have that wash, that weathering sort of in-world grime over the whole body. You can really see it on the back there and across the head as well. I like that it's not too heavy on the head. It doesn't look sort of like you know, sometimes you can see the sort of the sponge lines, the brush strokes and things like that, and it sort of looks a little bit hand applied, a little bit rushed, you know, because of course they are mass produced. But I like how subtle this is. It looks a little bit more in-world. It's not so obvious sort of brush marks or anything like that. It's a really subtle wash effect, so it's not too heavy-handed. And of course, sometimes when it is applied a little bit heavy, sometimes you get sort of really obvious pooling or perhaps even drips. I really don't like it when you can see that the sort of the wet wash has run down and created some sort of drip marks and things like that. It just gives it a nice tone. I have to say the body looks just a tiny bit darker than the head just under this particular lighting, but sort of when seen at a distance, it's a pretty good color match all over. Just kind of wish that the eyes were just a little bit more high contrast, but of course that has a little bit to do with the original video game design. Of course there, he does have red eyes and sort of an orange red body. There's not as strong a contrast as say the Funko black eyes on sort of humanoid skin there, so I do understand that. I'm just so excited. It's kind of odd to me that it has taken this long to get as much HK-47 merch in my collection. I recently acquired the Hasbro Vintage Collection carded figure. I can't wait to open up that one. He is such an iconic and beloved character from Knights of the Old Republic, and that video game is 20 years old. It's kind of funny to think that we've had to wait this long to get some really cool pieces of merchandise of this iconic droid assassin. He's got some iconic lines. Of course, he appears in many other games. I love encountering him in his Star Wars: The Old Republic, and of course, he is one of the early characters that you can collect in Galaxy of Heroes, one of my favorite Star Wars app games as well. So it's really fun to kind of have him represented here in my Funko collection because I have him in so many of my favorite Star Wars games as well. So he looks really fun. Just quickly, I'm just going to grab another Gaming Greats Funko that I picked up recently from the second Knights of the Old Republic game, the Sith Lords. This is Darth Traya. So these ones came out about the same time, and I received these both as Christmas gifts this year. It's really fun to see such fantastic representation from some of the really cool Star Wars games from years ago, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. I really hope to see more characters from this iconic Star Wars franchise for my Funko collection. There are some really cool characters that have yet to be made in basically any collectible format. I'm talking about the likes of Cartho Nassi, Mission Veo, Juhani. There's just some really cool characters that I want to line up on my Funko shelf alongside these ones. But for now, I'm really happy to have these two new KOTOR characters in my Funko Pop vinyl collection, and I think they look great. Absolutely fantastic Christmas gifts that I got this year. Really fun to see them out of their boxes as well. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars collectible and just had a lot of fun checking out the details. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Funko Pop vinyl fan, I recently unboxed the Darth Traya figure from Knights of the Old Republic 2. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Funko unboxing playlist. This is the way.